decompose. It merely disintegrates into smaller and smaller pieces. And these tiny bits of plastic are now entering the food chain through the algae and the plankton and then into the smaller fish, etc. We talked to somebody who has just come from there giving a lecture. They said that when you sift the water in the gyre, the weight of tiny plastic particles is 600 times that of organic material. In other words, the oceans are being, the oceans are being polluted in this manner, and it's not something that can be undone once it's done. The other thing that really worries me is the fact that carbon dioxide, half of the CO2 in the atmosphere, which we're adding to all the time, is absorbed by the water. And the ocean water is now becoming acidic. The pH level is dropping. And this is a matter of research done by universities along the coast. There was a big article about it a few months ago in the newspaper. It's affecting the mussels and the shells, etc. But if it affects the microplankton that produces the oxygen the world needs, this world could actually lose its oxygen. It used to be 50% of the world's oxygen was supplied by forests and 50% by this microplankton. We've eliminated most of the forests, and 80% of the world's oxygen is now produced by these microplankton. And if it starts to die because as the ocean becomes more acidic from all this CO2 that's in the air, what are we going to do?
It's great to have you on Speaking Frankly.
Try to be more cheerful, but it worries me.
Terribly important.
Yeah.
Terribly important. And one of the things I've thought about, the great thing of seeing in our society in the last 5 to 10 years, more and more people drinking water, bottled water, out of plastic bottles, you see, and being very glad that they're drinking water rather than Pepsi or Coca-Cola, etc., thinking that this is much more healthy. But I never thought about what those bottled waters were coming in. Plastic bottles.
Well, what a lot of people don't appreciate is that every piece of plastic that was ever made, except the little bit that's been burned and gone into the atmosphere, every piece of plastic that's ever been made still exists.
Would you say that again?
Every piece of plastic that was ever made still exists. It does not.
Every piece of plastic that was ever made still exists.
It does not decompose. Plastic does not decompose the way organic material decomposes, or wood or paper or anything else. Like last year, I think it was 20 billion pounds of plastic were made in the United States. This year it's going to be something like 30 billion. And I don't know if those are statistics I just remembered from that lecture. But no matter how many billion pounds there are, it stays there. It stays here. It either goes into landfill or, like particularly from Asia, etc., it washes down the rivers and ends up in the ocean in these Pacific gyres. So it's a very scary situation. And I don't think we have a government, or other countries don't either, that is really equipped or willing to take this kind of thing on.
Well, we need to take it on.
Well, of course.
As citizens, especially citizens in a democracy.
Mm-hmm.
See, that's the value of being informed, being educated, to know what our problems are, and then take steps to deal with our problems.
Mm-hmm. Well, let me illustrate, Frank. Let's say some years ago it was turned out that there was, people started to get worried because scientists were reporting there's mercury in fish. And of course, if there's a lot of mercury in the fish, you better not eat it. It's poisonous. And so they did some research and they found out, there's some mercury in the fish, but it's not enough to be really poisonous yet. What was the U.S.'s reaction? Oh, good. We can keep putting mercury in the air. Instead of saying, oh, thank goodness we found out in time, now we can stop putting mercury in the air.
Yeah.
You see? So, I mean, that doesn't really leave you with an optimistic outlook as to how they're going to deal with the plastic problem either, does it?
Well, you see, that's why we as citizens in a democracy need to be informed and then involved.
Mm-hmm.
See, I mean, that's part of the whole idea here of Speaking Frankly, to encourage us as citizens in a democracy to be informed and then do something about what needs to be done.
Mm-hmm. That's a great idea.
Well, and I'm so pleased to have you share with us some of our problems that we could do something about if we would do something about.
Well, I mean, that's the big difference, isn't it? I mean, it's easy enough to point out the problems. Picking out the solutions is really something else. I mean, carrying out a solution.
Well, you know, I subscribe to a magazine here, and it's interesting to me, this issue that just came of The Nation on Obama progressives exacting and the fights to come change. And one of the sections here of it, if I may just take a moment to read this. Spurning the conventional advice of the Beltway pundits to limit his agenda, Obama has acted boldly in response to the crisis. His recovery plan, despite being weakened in the Senate, includes the greatest increase in support for the poor since the Great Society, that's the Depression, and doubles the federal education budget. His budget calls for dramatic investment in core areas like healthcare and education. In fact, it is caution, not audacity, that may most retard any recovery and haunt the president, as exemplified by Treasury Secretary Timothy Geithner's bank bailout. You know, that is, we have a president now that's ready to act if, as a matter of fact, we who are there as the public, as the citizens, will call for those actions.
Well, the wealth of a country, as you know, Frank, as opposed to the money of a country, the wealth of a country depends upon its land, the crops that it produces, the goods and services it produces in its factories. That's where the wealth comes from. It's no good just spreading money that we have around unless we produce more wealth. And are those jobs, those millions of jobs that we have shipped abroad, are they coming back? I don't see, I mean, until they start coming back, this talk about, oh, well, you know, pretty soon the economy is going to recover, pretty soon it's going to bounce back, I think is just wishful thinking, because people somehow think that up times follow down times the way that spring follows winter. What's going to cause this economy to bounce back? Are these jobs coming back? I don't think so.
Well, as a matter of fact, I think it's terribly important that we are doing something about Detroit and the automobile industry, and not just letting these companies go out of business entirely, but to have jobs here in Detroit and in the United States of producing automobiles, so that we don't rely on automobile industries that are just abroad, that ship them in.
Well, mostly the automobile industry has been very decentralized for years. I mean, you know, a car that may be a U.S. car that may have the engine built here, may have the chassis built in Brazil and be assembled in Mexico. It's been like that for 15 or 20 years now.
Well, we better get with it.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think this country needs to be a productive country. I think other countries are thinking the same thing. People like to support their own country as much as possible. This whole idea of globalization, this race to the bottom, where you keep wages in Mexico super low in these factories because you can threaten these poor starving people with, you ask for more money, we'll ship the jobs to Vietnam. You know, this is no way to run a country or an economy. People need decent jobs and they need decent wages, and we're not getting it. It's just the opposite right now. There's this competition for who can get their jobs done the quickest, who can pay their people the least.
Now I mean, what you've just said there is so crucial for us. It's not a matter of who can do it the quickest and who can do it for the least, but who can do it so our people will be employed and our country can be successful economically as well as physically and also environmentally.
Well, I'll be a little more optimistic if I see there's been some work beginning on modifying the World Trade Organization and NAFTA and the other globalization treaties, because we need environmental standards put in there, we need labor standards put in there, and we need discretionary tariffs put in there so that you can defend your own country.
I mean, we need to have you back because we've run out of time. It's just been wonderful to have you share.
Well, thanks a lot, Frank.
Thank you.